A young black attorney. Unknown. Unafraid. Daring enough to take on a powerful judge. But does she have the strength to speak, knowing that one sentence from her lips could cost 3 people their careers, send 1 man to prison, and force an entire system to bow? 3:04 a.m., Olivia's phone rang. She answered. No voice. Just silence. Then the call dropped. A message flashed on the screen. If you walk into that courtroom, you won't walk out the same. No name. No explanation. Just a warning, cold as steel, slicing through the thick silence of her tiny apartment. What she didn't know was this. 1 clerk would lose her job, a cop would be suspended for falsifying reports, and a judge would lose his legacy because he believed power could outshine the truth. It all began with a $12,000 fine. No trial, no attorney, no official notice, no one held accountable. The man who was fined, Andrew Johnson, an undocumented black immigrant. The same man who once reported a hit and run. The driver? The son of a judge. Could be coincidence. Or maybe the system was out for revenge. You're dreaming too big, her colleague said. This is New York, not some law school debate. Olivia didn't argue, didn't smile. She was ready for the doubt in their eyes, for the cold shoulders, for the backlash from the very system she was trying to challenge. What she wasn't ready for was how fast it came. Day 1, an anonymous email loaded with malware. Night 2, her phone rang at midnight, no voice, just breathing, steady, measured, like a countdown. Night 3, her car was vandalized, all 4 tires slashed, windshield shattered, and on the hood, carved deep into the metal, 1 word, run. Olivia stared at it, her hand tightened around the silver ring in her coat pocket. She didn't run. 13 years ago, her mother, a black woman who didn't know the law, was pressured into signing away their home. That silver wedding ring? Scratched during the struggle. Olivia, just 8 years old, had stood in the hallway, watching, remembering, helpless. Now the ring lived in her pocket. A faded circle, a reminder. Some people were silenced not because they were weak, but because they didn't know how to defend themselves. Then came the file. Andrew Johnson's case. No referral, no formal retainer. Just a thin envelope dropped on her desk. Olivia took it and made a choice. She'd charge only 1/3 of her usual rate and hold the rest as a silent promise that this case would not be ignored. It wasn't much, but it was enough. When Andrew spoke of the fine without trial, Olivia saw her mother in his eyes. That same look of quiet betrayal from someone the system had tossed aside. She flipped through the first few pages, stopped cold. Every report had a signature, except one. The fine summary? No investigator's name, no date filed. Bottom corner, a line of ink, crooked, as if someone had altered the timestamp. A clumsy mistake, or someone confident no one would ever look. Olivia jotted notes, told no one. Then she typed his name, Andrew Johnson, into the internal database. A single, archived record flickered to life. Reporting party, hit-and-run fatality. Victim died on scene. Case sealed. No driver's name, no details. Just a scar on the system, deep enough to make Olivia squint and underline it with a silent question mark. She sat frozen in front of the screen. The dim desk lamp lit up Andrew's file. Her fingers rested on the paper's corner, the same way her 8-year-old hand once traced the smudged ink on her mother's house deed. This time, she felt fear. Not because of the threats, but because now, she finally knew how to fight back. And that was the part that made it dangerous. There was no promise she'd win, no assurance she'd even be heard. But Olivia knew this was no longer just about Andrew. She looked again at the word carved into her car hood. Run. Her fist clenched around the silver ring, and she stepped forward. Not for glory, not for reputation, but to remind the system of one thing. Some wounds, even old ones, still bleed in silence. Across the street, a curtain shifted, a window half open. A silhouette stood still, phone in hand. Camera light on, and when Olivia switched off her desk lamp, the light across the street vanished too. Tomorrow, she would walk into court, not to win, but to prove someone still dared to stand up, even knowing what it might cost. But when Olivia opened that door, she had no idea what was waiting. I was fined $12,000, and I never even stood in front of a judge. No hearing, no questions. No one asked me a single thing. Andrew's voice was quiet, but each word sliced the silence like a blade. His hands clutched a wrinkled envelope. Inside, everything he had left after selling his wife's wedding ring. Before he found Olivia's office, he'd knocked on 5 other doors. A weathered case file, an envelope full of loose change, collected from drawer bottoms, coin jars, and crumpled $1 bills. Each place gave him the same answer: without a retainer, we can't help. The 6th office had no shiny sign, no front desk, just the flicker of a desk lamp and the wind hissing through an old window. Olivia was scribbling notes, but when Andrew said those words, she looked up. Didn't ask for more, didn't question him, just quietly said, "Sit down, tell me everything." At first, Olivia had planned to decline. Her schedule was full. The risk? Too high. He couldn't even afford a retainer, the bare minimum every firm demanded. In today's system, lawyers don't work on sympathy. But then, Andrew began smoothing out each crumpled dollar bill with the careful hands of someone who had nothing left to give. And his eyes, they weren't begging, they were pleading. "This is everything I have left. I know $12,000 is a lot, especially for a family running a small bakery, but this isn't just about money. It's about dignity. It's why I came to America, to follow the law, to become a citizen the right way. And now I'm being punished without anyone asking me a single question." Olivia didn't know why she nodded, not then. But later, she would understand. It wasn't the money he brought to her desk. It was something she thought the system had already killed: trust. Her colleagues used to call her the idealist. But Olivia wasn't dreaming. She was calculating. Every step, like a chess player staring down a rigged board. What she didn't know yet was that this case wasn't just a wrongful fine. It was a door, a quiet opening into the very maze the system had spent years making sure no one would ever enter. And then she saw Andrew wasn't the only one silenced. The moment Olivia began digging into the case, she realized Andrew wasn't alone. This wasn't some one-off mistake. It was a crack, spreading like a spiderweb beneath the calm surface of a broken system. She uncovered others, fined, silenced, cut off from benefits, simply for doing the right thing. A plumber penalized for helping an elderly woman. A single mother sued because her baby cried at night. A war veteran ordered to tear down the fence he built around his PTSD healing garden. None of them had lawyers. None of them knew how to fight back. None dared knock on a door. Because when you're at the bottom of the system, you learn to stay quiet long before you ever learn to read the law. But Andrew was different. Not just because he spoke up, but because of what he said. The one thing the system never forgives: the truth. They wanted me to shut up. Just like when I reported that hit and run. Andrew whispered it. Olivia jotted it down. She didn't ask more. She didn't need to. One late afternoon, as Olivia stood by the courthouse copier, stacks of files in hand, a young female attorney walked by. She paused just for a moment. They'd seen each other before. At Andrew's first hearing. "You're still on Johnson's case?" the young woman asked. "I turned it down. Not enough to work with." Olivia didn't respond, just smiled. No judgment, no lecture. The woman's eyes glanced at the files in Olivia's arms. Then, a softer tone. "I'll be following it. It's just that I'm not brave enough." Not yet. Now a $12,000 fine had dropped on Andrew's head, without a hearing, without evidence, without an independent report. Olivia was starting to see it for what it was. Not a punishment, but a message, a system-wide warning, draped in legal language. And this time, Andrew refused to bow. For the first time in years, Olivia felt she wasn't just practicing law. She was tracing the broken edges of a machine once built for justice, now twisted by human hands. She didn't know it yet, but the next step wouldn't be about statutes or codes. It would be a descent into a maze of power, revenge, and silence bought with fear. The deeper she dug, the more light she found buried beneath paper and dust. 2:12 a.m. The desk lamp flickered. Stacks of documents spilled across the old wooden table like a paper maze. The coffee had gone cold. A draft slipped through the cracked window, making the light tremble. Olivia didn't move. Her eyes drilled into every line, not reading, but dissecting. Every report, every missing signature, every seal, misaligned by millimeters. It wasn't clerical error. It was the signature of a hand long accustomed to hiding the truth. She stopped at one page. The ink was off. Someone had rushed the correction. She scribbled a note in the margin, eyes narrowing. She didn't need another threat. She knew exactly what and who she was up against. She closed the folder, wrote one line on the edge of the page: "Tomorrow, The truth speaks. The next morning, bitter cold, the sky a sheet of dull gray. Olivia stepped outside, clutching her case file, but froze after just a few steps. Her car, all 4 tires slashed. The windshield shattered, and across the hood, a single mark carved deep, X. It wasn't a warning. It was a signal. From those who wanted her to stop walking. Olivia scanned the parking lot. The wind sliced her cheek like a blade. She didn't call the police, didn't turn back, just gripped the case file tighter and crossed the street like fear had never lived in her body. Across the hood, beside the carved X, was a faint tattoo. Like a signature, one she'd seen before in the files. No one heard her speak. But if they had seen her, they would have known. I'm not backing down, not for anyone. Wherever they are, they will face the truth. But the truth doesn't wait. It knocks in the form of an invisible sentence. The courtroom was frozen. Not a whisper, not a friendly face. At the high bench, Judge Richard Bradford, black robe draped down like a shadow, eyes sharp as razors. He didn't need to speak. His presence alone made the whole room shrink. The door swung open. Officer Carter stepped in, uniform pressed, name tag gleaming like a medal of honor. He stood tall, like a flagpole, voice firm, steady, without pause. The defendant violated immigration protocol, used false information to maintain an illegal business license. No documents, no photos, no recordings, no witnesses, just words. Olivia stood, didn't check her notes, didn't need to. Her voice sliced through the air like steel. Objection, Your Honor. No supporting evidence, no independent investigation, no verification from any credible agency. If there's real proof, present it here before the law. Bradford looked up. Not angry, not defensive. He just stared at Olivia, then at Andrew, like he was looking at a number. Nothing more is needed. He turned away. The defendant is fined $12,000. Failure to pay will result in deportation. The gavel slammed down. Clack. No one gasped. No one questioned it. Because everything had been decided long before Olivia ever stepped inside that room. Andrew lowered his head. His fingers clenched the wrinkled envelope of coins. His eyes blurred. And in Olivia's, justice had just been auctioned off. Justice fell, not with a gavel, but with silence. Andrew didn't cry. He just sat there. Shoulders slumped, hands clenched tight, as if trying to hold on to the last shred of dignity before it shattered in front of his wife and child. That money was our entire life. His voice was soft, but in the courtroom, already unraveling, it rang like something breaking. No one responded. No one explained. Just the scrape of chairs, the cold tap of shoes against marble, and shadows slipping out, as if justice had just died here. Olivia didn't move, didn't speak. She just stared at the judge's bench, as if trying to strip away the polished wood and see the rot underneath. Her fingers curled, not from rage, but from something older, something rising again. She pulled a pen from her coat, eyes still fixed on the bench. Step by step, she returned to her seat, opened her laptop. No words, no glances, just typing, one line at a time. Not fast, not loud, but firm, appealing the decision, requesting a new trial. The courtroom was empty now, but Olivia stayed. On the desk she taped a small note. Next time, truth will speak. Olivia didn't cry, she wrote. That night, Olivia didn't go home. The office was dark, lit only by a desk lamp casting shadows across her unwashed face. Her eyes, bruised with fatigue, stayed fixed on the screen. Coat still on, dinner untouched. Sleep, a luxury she couldn't afford tonight. On the table, a printed copy of the appeal, smudged by coffee stains and the pressure of clenched fists. Her fingers tapped steadily on the keyboard. Not fast, not loud, but deliberate. Each keystroke like driving a nail into a door justice once shut. She wasn't writing in anger. She wrote from silence, compressed, like a storm building at the ocean floor. 3 days later, an email blinked into her inbox. Appeal accepted. A new hearing will be scheduled. Presiding Judge, Henry Clayton. A name that made New York's legal circles pause, not because he was famous, but because he owed no one anything. No party, no allegiance, no compromise. Olivia received the news standing on a subway platform. She didn't smile, didn't cheer, just a slight nod, like an athlete hearing the starter pistol. It's on. Meanwhile, Midtown Manhattan, a sleek bar bathed in gold light, reflections dancing off the polished black counter. At the far end sat Bradford, gray suit, silver watch, a glass of whiskey swirling in his hand, as if time itself was caught in the motion. His phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a familiar name, Henry Clayton. Bradford didn't flinch, just let out a dry, brittle laugh. He owes me. The words weren't meant for anyone, but Carter heard them. Clear as day. Bradford set the glass down, stared through the rim like looking back 20 years. I once pulled him out of a scandal, but now I'm not sure that debt still holds. He turned to Carter, voice low but sharp enough to draw blood. You think justice beats personal debt? Carter didn't answer, just swallowed hard, the whiskey in his mouth now bitter as a warning. Bradford tapped the side of his glass, a cold, hollow clink. Then he lifted his gaze. Gone was the nostalgia. What remained was command. We haven't lost. The game just moved courts. 3 days later, a name lit up the screen, and an old debt came back to life. Before heading to the agency, Olivia opened her laptop. She typed, Andrew Johnson, immigration fine case. One result popped up. Last updated MH0205. No name, no department, no details. She traced the initials, MH. The system responded, account inactive, no photo, no reason for departure. She pivoted, searched the administrative staff list from the past 6 months. The page was suspiciously empty. Then, buried in the corner of the screen, an old employee code, MH731, sudden leave, 2 weeks after Andrew's fine was issued. She jotted it down in her notebook. Didn't know why, but something in her gut whispered, you just touched a link they buried. Whoever filed this has disappeared. Early morning. The immigration building stood under a thin veil of fog. Sunlight hadn't pierced the tinted glass yet. The front door hissed open. Olivia stepped in. No assistant, no appointment. Just the sound of her heels echoing against cold marble, like a quiet knock on a system long asleep. Records room. A door left slightly ajar. Michelle, administrative staff for nearly 20 years, looked up, startled, not by noise, but by Olivia's stare, not angry, not accusatory, just cold, precise, unblinking. I need the original file for Andrew Johnson, now. Michelle froze. Her hand tightened around the file she was working on. 1 second, 2. Then she stood up. Walked over to an old steel cabinet, pulled open the third drawer from the bottom, extracted a file, unlabeled, no case number. Olivia didn't sit, she stood there, flipping through the pages, eyes slicing through text like a scalpel, each word no longer just data, but a breadcrumb. Page 8. Olivia stopped. March 12th. But something was off. The 3 had been stretched into an 8. The ink was fresh. The curve, just slightly wrong, misaligned from the ruled line beneath. The pen pressure varied. The edge of the page crinkled, the subtle scar of something once erased and reprinted. She didn't need a magnifying glass. Just time and clarity. She stared long enough to see it all. Top right corner, a faint signature. Not Michelle's. Olivia made a note, eyes narrowing. The first breadcrumb toward a name she hadn't dared to speak. Lucas. She looked up, didn't say a word, just stared at Michelle, long enough to make silence say everything. Michelle looked away. Before I read this aloud, Olivia's voice was low. Would you rather be the one to say it? Michelle didn't answer, but her shoulders trembled. The room was so still, it felt like someone had pulled the air out of the ceiling. An hour later, the recorder clicked on. Michelle's voice filled the room, trembling, but not because of Olivia, because she had just crossed the line between fear and truth. A system once thought unbreakable had just cracked open. From a crooked digit, and one woman who stared long enough to see what others looked away from. One smear of ink. One name. And a door that couldn't be shut again. A small office. Warm desk light brushed against Michelle's cheek. She didn't defend herself, didn't look away, just stared at the file, as if it were passing judgment on her soul. Bradford knew my daughter had a heart defect. The doctors said, if we didn't operate within 3 months, there'd be no chance. Olivia said nothing. She sat still, eyes locked, unblinking, watching a woman slowly fracture in front of her. He didn't threaten me, didn't yell. He just showed up, laid a thick envelope on the desk. Inside, money, and a single sheet of paper, with a date to change. That's all, he said. Michelle leaned back, shoulders dropped, as if confessing had taken the last bit of strength from her spine. I knew it was wrong, but all I could see was my little girl's face. I thought, just this once, and then forget. Olivia tilted her head. Her voice was quiet, but each word fell like iron. If you stay silent, you're teaching your daughter that silence is the only way to survive. Michelle froze. Her eyes shimmered, but no tears fell. Just a single nod, soft but real. I'll testify. I can't teach her what's right while I'm doing what's wrong. Silence again. Then Michelle looked straight at Olivia. I know, he didn't do this for me. He did it for Lucas, his son. Olivia lowered her gaze. Beneath the desk, a tiny recorder clicked on. Not to incriminate, but to protect Michelle from the very people who had once taught her to stay silent. That night, Olivia sat alone in her office. The screen flickered. She backed up the audio into 3 separate copies. One encrypted copy in a locked safe, one sent to her legal counsel, and one that never left her side. The next morning, Michelle walked in, eyes dark with exhaustion, face pale, but her gaze steady. She placed 2 items on Olivia's desk, one unaltered file, untouched, one handwritten statement, dated, timed, and signed. No apologies, no excuses. Just one final line, slanted but firm. I will testify, not because I'm brave, but because I refuse to let my daughter grow up in a world where truth is the easiest thing to tear apart. The confession was spoken. Fear still whispered. Michelle sat in her tiny apartment, clutching a photo of her daughter. On the table, a handwritten confession, its slanted words trembling but resolute. Next to it, an unsealed envelope, holding the scanned doctored files, the confession video, every piece of evidence Olivia had helped her gather. She typed a message. Olivia, I can't do this. I'm scared. I'm sorry. Her finger hovered over send. The screen lit up again. Another message appeared. I know you're scared. I was too. But if we stay silent, how many more Andrews will there be? Will your daughter grow up in a world where truth is twisted, or one where her mother once stood for it? Michelle stared at the screen. Tears fell, not in panic but in clarity. She deleted her message and added one final line to her confession. I'm not afraid anymore. 2 a.m. Power outage. Michelle turned on her phone's flashlight. A weak glow swept across the living room. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, brushed past her front door. She held her daughter close. Hands trembling, she typed, Someone's watching me. I'm scared for my little girl. I want to retract my statement. 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. It was Olivia. No questions, no small talk. She stepped inside, locked the door, swept the apartment. From her bag, she pulled out a tiny camera, mounted it in the corner, angled it toward the desk. If they try to silence you, this camera will make sure they never speak again. Michelle sat down, her hand pressed over her heart, the same place where she once hid her daughter's photo while signing a confession she never thought she'd survive. For her, I won't take it back. At that exact moment, Olivia sat in her office, fingertips brushing across the file folder. No wedding ring, no memories to weigh her down, just clarity. And a promise, passed down from those who were silenced, to someone who refused to be. She glanced at the mirror on her desk. No makeup, dark circles beneath her eyes, hair untouched. She studied her reflection for a long time. Tomorrow, I don't need to look strong, I just need to be. Because if I fall, there might be no one left to rise. In the bottom drawer sat an old case file. Years ago, Olivia had skimmed through it, a hit and run. The victim, a single mother. The one who reported it, Andrew. The name of the driver, redacted. But now, after Michelle whispered the name Lucas, every fragment slid into place. Andrew wasn't just a victim. He was the man who once dared to expose the son of a judge. And ever since that day, Bradford had sworn he would make him pay. One testimony could bring it all down. But who would dare speak? The courtroom was brighter than the day before, but the air was heavy as stone, every seat filled. The press had arrived early. This wasn't just another appeal hearing. It was a final standoff between a once untouchable system and a woman brave enough to speak its name. In the far back corner, Michelle sat in silence. No one noticed her, except Olivia, a small nod between them, wordless but weighty as a vow. 8:30 a.m. The doors open. Everyone stood. Judge Henry Clayton entered. Silver hair, slow steps, eyes like a depth no one could see the bottom of. He was the kind of man who once convicted a governor's son and nearly lost his seat for it. The one who had saved him back then was Bradford. They used to stand on the same side. But today, they faced each other across enemy lines. Clayton didn't need to strike the gavel. His presence alone silenced the room. After the formalities, Officer Carter stepped forward. His voice steady. Defendant Andrew Johnson has violated immigration protocol, used false information to maintain an illegal business license. No documents, no photos, no recordings, no witnesses, just words. Olivia stood. She didn't need to glance at her notes. Her voice sliced the air. Objection, Your Honor. There is no supporting evidence, no independent verification, no confirmation from any recognized authority. Clayton turned to her. You have evidence to counter this? Olivia nodded. I respectfully request to play a video, if the court permits. Clayton gave a slight nod. Olivia turned, pressed play. The screen flickered on. Michelle's voice filled the room, shaky but firm. I took money from Judge Bradford. He told me to alter the records. If I didn't, I'd lose my job. Bradford leapt to his feet. Objection. That video is inadmissible. Clayton replied calmly. Unless it's verified in person, the court cannot accept it. The entire courtroom held its breath. Olivia turned, her voice steady, her gaze locked toward the back of the room. Michelle Hernandez, if you're present, please come forward. Silence. A beat passed. Then, from the far corner, a figure slowly rose, almost invisible until now. Michelle, her face pale, arms still wrapped tightly around a folder. Every step forward felt like she was walking through her own fear. Olivia met her eyes. A quiet nod. No words, but more than enough. Michelle stepped up to the stand. I confirm the video is real. I altered the date from March 12th to August 12th. This, she raised her hand slightly, is the original file, and this is my signed affidavit, notarized. She paused. I sold my apartment to repay the money. Not to save myself, but so my daughter would know. Silence is not something to be rewarded. Clayton studied her, not with suspicion, but the gaze of a man who once believed. Then he turned to Bradford. His voice quiet, steady. Richard, you once saved my career, but justice doesn't pay its debts in silence. Clayton tightened his grip on the gavel. The court accepts this new evidence. Andrew Johnson is hereby exonerated. The $12,000 fine is vacated. And the court orders a criminal investigation into Judge Richard Bradford for abuse of power, bribery, and document tampering. Gasps, whispers, pens scribbling. A law student fumbled for his notebook. A father gripped his son's hand tighter. Remember this day, he whispered. Andrew stood, covered his face, then looked at Olivia and gave her a silent nod. A nod that said everything. Bradford stood, lips moving, but no words came. No one spoke to him. No one looked his way. Only backs turning. Only silence. Clayton continued. Michelle Hernandez is sentenced to 12 months of probation and community service. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a $500 bill. For her daughter, he said quietly. If anyone wishes to help, don't hesitate. The first to step forward was the federal prosecutor. Then a court clerk. A journalist, a uniformed officer, and Olivia, she placed an envelope on the bench. My fee for this case. I'm not taking it. Before striking the gavel, Clayton turned toward Bradford. Took a breath. Slow, measured. No one stands above the law. He raised the gavel and brought it down. Clack. Signed. Carter is hereby suspended for perjury. The case will be referred to the Department of Justice. Olivia remained still. She didn't leave the courtroom. Instead, she reached into her briefcase and pulled out another folder. I can't walk away yet, she said, voice firm. There's one more truth that hasn't been spoken. She told them. About the messages, the slashed tires, the X carved into her hood, and the figure standing in the dark across the street. I'm not telling you this for sympathy, she said. I'm telling you because justice cannot survive if the truth-tellers are threatened into silence. She turned her eyes to Clayton. I didn't say anything before, because I needed the system to expose itself first. Clayton held her gaze, then nodded once, and tapped the gavel softly. This court orders an investigation into all threats made against attorneys and witnesses in this case. A few days later, the results of the federal investigation came in. The person who had stalked Michelle, the one who slashed Olivia's tires, who sent the anonymous threats, Lucas Bradford, the very man Andrew once reported, the son of the judge who tried to bury the truth. Lucas was arrested, charged with 3 federal crimes: witness intimidation, destruction of property, and obstruction of justice. His trial was scheduled for the following month. But for those who had witnessed that courtroom, justice had already begun to awaken. The media erupted. Young lawyer takes down power machine, Brooklyn Daily. Can one trial shift the nation's trust? New York Sentinel. Justice is no longer a privilege of the powerful, independent watchdog. The video of Michelle's confession spread like wildfire. No one asked people to share it, but they did. Over and over. Outside the New York State courthouse, an elderly black man held up a cardboard sign. 30 years ago, I was wrongfully convicted. No one believed me. Today, I believe in justice again. Justice was declared, but the questions still echo. Late afternoon, sunlight streamed down the courthouse steps. Not just light, but a closing curtain to a war that had lasted far too long. Olivia stepped out. She didn't raise her chin, didn't wave, just walked, slow and steady, as if each step pressed into memories too deep to erase. Behind her, Andrew spoke to the press. Michelle held her daughter. This time, her tears weren't from fear, but relief. Across social media, the name Olivia Mayfield spread faster than anyone could control. Not as a hero, but as a reminder to a nation, justice doesn't show up on its own. It's claimed through courage. But Olivia didn't stop. She didn't answer questions, didn't turn to the crowd. She turned down a quiet street, the one where Andrew used to live. Outside the little bakery, a handwritten sign taped to the glass read, "Justice won." She paused, not in anger, but because a familiar question had returned to her chest. How many more Andrews, still waiting for someone to speak up? How many Michelles still surviving in silence? How many Bradfords still manipulating the law from behind curtains of power? She pulled out her phone, opened a note written months ago. Today, I won. One small voice can still change everything. She didn't post it, didn't send. Just saved it, like a seed, and walked on. As she passed through the crowd, a quiet voice behind her broke the silence. "Thank you for not staying silent." She turned. It was the young attorney from earlier, no longer hesitant. She stood among the crowd, no longer hiding. "Next time, if there's a case like this, I won't look away." Olivia said nothing, just nodded. But in her eyes, a legacy had just been passed on. 1 week later, Kansas. In a tiny kitchen, a young mother sealed an envelope. On her laptop screen, against all odds, Olivia Mayfield's historic win. She looked at her sleeping child, whispered, "I had lost all hope until I saw you in that courtroom. Thank you for reminding me we are not invisible." Brooklyn. Olivia stood by the window of her office, in her hands the letter. She didn't smile, but her eyes lit up because truth once spoken had started to travel. Cut to a high school classroom. A teacher stands at the front. On the projector screen, a still image from the courtroom. This is Olivia Mayfield, the woman who made the system look in the mirror. A black student in the back speaks softly. Was she a lawyer? The teacher smiles. Not just that, she's a reminder that silence is not a way to live. And now, if you were Olivia, would you stand up even if you were the only one? Have you ever seen injustice? What do you think about Michelle being granted a second chance? Was it mercy or a chance to rebuild? Tell us your story right below this video. Don't be afraid to speak up, because justice begins with a small voice. Subscribe, share this story, let it reach someone who needs to hear it today. You don't have to be a lawyer to stand for what's right. Sometimes all it takes is one view, one share, one moment of not staying silent, and maybe one day the name Olivia Mayfield won't need to be remembered, because standing up for truth will be what everyone does.